come to this event and to speak, and I'm trying to get closer. Can you hear me? Everything okay? Okay. I am not known for being quiet, so I don't imagine this is going to be a problem. But love the opportunity to speak, love the opportunity to talk about things I think that are relevant to not only the financial industry, financial institutions, but also in terms of overall cybersecurity. So that's a focus of mine and something I enjoy. Really quickly, because I'm obligated, I'm with Burk I.T. We're thrilled to be here and to support this user group. You can see a little bit about us. I'm not going to bore you with this slide other than to say Stephanie and Tyler and several of our folks are going to be in the vendor hall, so stop by, visit, ask questions, learn about us. This is just a little bit about me. I've been in this space for almost 30 years now. IT security is the principal component of my background. I am the general manager at Burk I.T. This is for no other reason than to let you know I really care about cybersecurity. I really care about the needs of our industry and the needs of users in general. So this is a primary focus of what I do. But we're here to talk about artificial intelligence, AI, the buzzword that has driven all of us insane over the last, 2.5 years. These were just a few examples that I could find of fun ways artificial intelligence has permeated the world that we live in. I think my favorite on the screen is the little red kiosk from Pizza Hut. If you were not aware, there are certain Pizza Huts you can walk into now where they will film you with a camera, and supposedly an embedded AI engine will determine your mood and what pizza you should order. You can also get an AI-embedded climate-controlled mattress that will determine your best sleep patterns. We have AI-embedded headphones and apps on our devices, and you can even have Acrobat determine the best way to create your PDF using artificial intelligence. So this has become the buzzword that we deal with, but we really want to explore what is artificial intelligence, how does it apply to all of us, how is it impacting what we do. And at the end of the day, you can see the definition on the screen, but AI ultimately is an attempt to have a computer system perform as a human. To do tasks that normally require human intelligence, things like visual perception, speech recognition, decision making, language translation, and a lot of other things. And what we've seen is really an evolution in computing power that has allowed this to happen. So the last 18 months really has turned the IT industry and the concept of artificial intelligence on its head. Things were going along just fine until we reached November of 2022. And November 30, 2022, we met ChatGPT, and everything changed. Everyone was overwhelmed with this new technology. This was the first iteration of a theory of mind AI model that actually worked and was readily available to all of us. And as you can see from the Google trend, the world significantly changed. We went from a scenario where we knew artificial intelligence as IBM's Deep Blue doing this machine learning model to we had interactive devices like Alexa and Siri, but then we had ChatGPT that could actually create content and interact with us in a very, very human way. And that really has forced us to consider, how does AI impact us on a day-to-day basis? What is changing? How quickly is it changing? And how do we need to adjust as an industry? So artificial intelligence today, all of you are using probably parts of these types of things every day in your regular business lives and personal lives. You're using Copilot on your browser, and you're using HubSpot for marketing. You're doing all these things, and that's great. But there's also a cybercrime component to this. The cyber criminals are also using AI, and they're using it very effectively in terms of social engineering attacks and data mining and some very scary, subversive code development tools and other things to leverage artificial intelligence against us as a business community. So really what we want to focus on today is how do we adjust and leverage AI not only to make us more effective as individuals in a business environment, in a banking environment, but also how do we use AI to overcome its use against us by cyber criminals. I want to break this down a little further, and this is really important as we talk about artificial intelligence and how we manage that risk. We really need to understand what is artificial intelligence, what are the various versions of AI, what are some of the buzzwords we're dealing with, what are some of the definitions that we need to know. So in sort of a hierarchy, lowest to highest, we're going to talk about the different versions of artificial intelligence. The first version we have here are reactive machines, and these are really AI systems that have a predefined data set. This is a set of instructions that the AI engine can leverage very quickly to do specific tasks very effectively, but it's not gaining knowledge over time. It's not adding to that data set. It's simply leveraging a data set that's made available to it. This is original AI as we have come to know it. So back in the day, 15, 20 years ago, when you saw IBM's Deep Blue playing chess against chess masters, or you're playing Jeopardy and those types of things, it was just a very robust engine of information that it can leverage and make those answer decisions. Your basic email filters that we've all used in our enterprises for the last 10 years are reactive machine or machine learning models, where it's simply a very strong set of instructions to interpret inbound and outbound email and make decisions. Add recommendations. If you've ever been on Netflix and it recommends a movie to you based on things that you've watched in the past, that's simply general data mining of what have you done in the past and how quickly can I respond to that. So this is AI that's very basic. But then we evolve to limited memory AI. And this is the AI that we've all been fascinated with over the last 10 years prior to ChatGPT. So this is Apple's Siri product or Amazon Alexa, different web chatbots that seem to react more in a more human way when we interact with them. Other natural language processing mechanisms that we deal with. It can learn a little bit over time. It can make decisions based on input that it receives in the conversation, so it's a little more interactive. But this is not that next iteration. This is the first iteration of interactive AI. But then we come to theory of mind, artificial intelligence. This is AI that can actually interpret the human mind. It can interpret our emotion, our belief systems, our intentions, the way we interact with it, and it can adapt very, very quickly. This is ChatGPT. This is Google Gemini, formerly Google Bard, and a lot of these other engines. We've now reached, Tyler, you correct me wrong, we were at ChatGPT 4. We now have the next iteration of ChatGPT. It's a new name now. I can't think of the new name.
4.0.
4.0, thank you. They've evolved it a little bit, but we are at this point where it is creating not just text content, but video content, artistic interpretation. You can ask AI engines how to create a piece of art based on the input that you provided. It is very human in its interaction. So this is where we find ourselves today. This is the latest iteration of artificial intelligence that we're interacting with. The next iteration, and this has been defined, is self-aware or super intelligent AI. This is AI where the theoretical, and this is all theoretical at this point, the level of artificial intelligence is such that it can exceed human intelligence. It is self-aware. It can react in a way beyond what humans can do from a computative perspective. This is, and I joke, but I'm not, this is the concept of Skynet that we all saw in the Terminator movies, or how AI that is making decisions on its own and has evolved behind human comprehension. You see it referred to as a theoretical level of AI, and it is. This does not exist yet. But what I find entertaining is, as I was doing the research for this presentation and was looking at historical articles on the subject, when we go back, I found in late 2020, early 2021 from IBM, who was obviously one of the leaders in supercomputing and artificial intelligence development, they refer to in late 2020 theory of mind AI as theoretical and potentially not possible. 3 years ago. So here we find ourselves with the reality of theory of mind AI, knowing that artificial intelligence, like super intelligent artificial intelligence, is coming down the pipe. Now, we are seeing an industry that's adapting to this. We're seeing governmental controls around the efficacy, the effectiveness, and the ethical implications of using artificial intelligence and where that's going to take us. So there is a goal to create safe artificial intelligence. That's a good thing. But this is the next generation that we'll be dealing with. Some other terms that are important when you talk about artificial intelligence: natural language processing. This is that component of limited memory AI that allows things like Amazon Alexa and Apple Siri and Google Assistant to interact with you effectively. It is the ability of a computing system to learn and adapt to the human language in multiple different languages. So we all use this probably on a day-to-day basis with our phones, with the smart devices in our homes. Computer vision, the ability of visual stimuli being interpreted and used to make decisions. So self-driving cars, facial recognition systems, object tracking, physical security surveillance. There are really good video surveillance systems now that can track objects and make decisions based on what they see. So this is something that's been around now for more than a decade and used very effectively. Machine learning. This is an important term to talk about. This is a field of software engineering in the artificial intelligence space, part of that reactive machine level of artificial intelligence that uses pattern recognition to make decisions based on data set. This is where we're going to see artificial intelligence used significantly in terms of IT security and data mining and reactive controls to log source stimulation, making decisions in terms of spam filtering, in terms of log management, in terms of application control on your devices, next generation antivirus and anti-malware. This is really the sort of the heart and soul of artificial intelligence from a security perspective, and something that's very important to all financial institutions. This is an area we're going to spend a little time talking about value. So AI and IT security. This is an important conversation. We have to become agile. We have to use the tools available to us to defend against the threats that every organization faces from cyber criminals, because the bad guys are using AI against us, and we have to be able to adapt. So we really want to spend a little time about the pros and cons of artificial intelligence in terms of what the good guys are doing and what the bad guys are doing and how we can manage that process. So let's talk about some of the pros of artificial intelligence. Threat detection through data analysis and pattern recognition. All of you that work in the IT space of your financial institution or work in operations and have had to deal with systems that have to be set up for logging, we need to be able to capture information and use the computing power available to us today to analyze those logs and determine what threats the organization is facing. We need to get that in terms of your endpoint devices, your PCs, your workstations, your network devices, your wireless devices, any bring your own device scenarios so we can analyze what's going on. Automated alerting and remediation. This is huge in terms of not only threat analysis, but how do you alert your team to know there's something going on? That someone clicked a link, that someone tried to intrude on a computer, someone tried to compromise a website or your mobile banking app or some type of loan platform you're using or some other mechanism. Fraud detection is huge. Everyone here has probably delved at some level into the new advances in fraud detection. Being able to feed, check images and other transaction data into a system and detect fraud patterns based on end user or customer behavior. That's a mechanism of machine learning and advances in artificial intelligence to make you more effective as an organization. Intelligent automated network scanning, vulnerability remediation. All of us deal with new threats each and every day. AI has enabled the bad guys to write code faster than most of us can react. So the ability to know that your environment is patched, that your applications are up to date, that your systems are secure, that there are not misconfigurations in your environment, that you are prepared to react to this environment is absolutely fundamental. And that is a component where AI has become absolutely vital to what we do. So let's talk about the last bullet point. AI has allowed IT and the banking industry in general to lower the bar to entry in terms of cybersecurity, to provide easier code development, easier learning mechanisms, better training options and management tools. It has really made it easier for everyone in the organization to become part of the solution, to engage, to develop their skills, to become stronger in terms of their overall user awareness, in terms of their overall viability for the organization and how they can react and support the defense against cyber threats, and how honestly you can become more effective in your various business units. There is value to using things like ChatGPT and fraud detection tools and other things in your different business units in terms of the leveraging of artificial intelligence. So great advantages. And there's some really interesting ways in which these advantages of artificial intelligence are being used. We've seen it deployed at the border of our nation and other nations, and it's doing bomb detection through visual pattern recognition and weight distribution in vehicles as they come across scales and environmental changes and temperature changes, and it can correlate that data and analyze that data very effectively. So we're defending entry points all around the world using artificial intelligence. We're diagnosing illnesses and coming up with treatments much more quickly than we ever had in the past, because we can take huge data sets and small variables and leverage those together and correlate that data and determine what's going on with that patient. We can actually do predictive analysis of health issues and help people over time using artificial intelligence. The military is leveraging this in terms of reconnaissance and automated surveillance mechanisms, so we're not putting soldiers at harm. We can do that with computers and drones and other mechanisms where we don't have to have humans in the field, which is a huge advantage. The last one is my personal favorite. We can now read your mind. And this is, I'm not making this up. Because of the advances in generative AI and things like ChatGPT, those types of generative AI engines, you can actually put someone in an MRI machine and analyze those brainwaves through an AI engine and determine with about 86% accuracy what that person is thinking and hearing in the room. This is the reality of the world that we live in. But this has advantages, not only in terms of being able to understand if someone's telling the truth or not, but understanding if someone is susceptible to harm. There are now hats that you can put on heavy machinery operators and truck drivers and know, have they lost focus? Are they not focusing on the primary task? Maybe they're distracted by a secondary task. Maybe they're drowsy. Maybe they're in a position to where they may want to do self-harm. And that interpretive data can save lives and can save vehicles and keep people from being at risk. So there is tremendous advantage to the use of this information. But on the flip side of that, the bad guys are taking advantage. And this is where we have to be concerned. Social engineering in a world of artificial intelligence is downright scary. We have reached a point where video and audio deepfakes and human impersonation are frighteningly real. They are real to the point where they are almost imperceptible to the human eye. We can reproduce audio and video of an individual that is almost indistinguishable. So this is the type of threat that we're facing. We're seeing these attacks not only become more advanced, but we're seeing them become automated. So cyber criminals are using botnet networks and other mechanisms to have AI do the work for them. So less people, more attacks, more frequently, with better output. So this is a threat that all of our organizations face on a daily basis. Malware code generation and adaptation. This is a very scary threat. If you are not running some form of new generation advanced malware protection, then you are at risk, because the cyber criminals can adapt their code on the fly every second of every day. The days of being able to identify a piece of malware based on a signature are gone. We have seen zero-day attacks that, I feel like I'm cutting it in now, so I keep leaning forward, I apologize, but we are seeing zero-day attacks using malware on environments adapt minute by minute. We're seeing attacks that we're stopping with our tools at Burk I.T. that have never actually hit a signature database. They've never been fully recognized because the code changes that fast. It's that adaptable. Network scanning and vulnerability detection, those same advantages that we're using to protect our environments, the bad guys are using to determine if is your environment vulnerable. They're constantly scanning. They're constantly adapting. They're embedding code in the environment to determine what is the one little toehold or the one little crack in the defense that I need to leverage to get in and plant some malware or plant some ransomware or glean some data or to have a better angle for social engineering, to better impersonate someone else in the organization. This is a very real threat. Language assimilation. This is something that scares me. We've joked a lot in the last 24 hours about all of our different accents and the fact that I sound very much as if I was born and raised in East Tennessee. You can't deny that. So back in the day, if you wanted to impersonate Ben, if you did not sound like me, if you did not sound like you grew up in East Tennessee, then you knew it wasn't Ben. Well, now the bad guys can sound exactly like me and emulate my accent and my mannerisms and the types of words that I use. As the folks at the office like to refer to my language as the Lawson lexicon, they can fill in all the little words that Ben would use and make it sound exactly like me. And they can do this because the computing power is available and the data sets are available. Tyler is here recording this session. We'll post this at Burk for a lot of our other clients to take advantage of. That also means, sadly, that I'm putting a sample of my language and a visual of me out into the world, and there's a good chance the cyber bad guys can take that and manipulate it. We have to be prepared for that. We're seeing a lot of situations where we're needing to provide and are in the process of rolling out a mechanism where our clients can validate our identities through secondary controls. Because just because you get a phone call from someone that says it's from Burk I.T. and the caller ID says it's from Burk I.T. and that really sounds like an engineer from Burk I.T., there's a chance he could be fake. And we're trying to make sure there are tools in place that you can, out of band, through a multi-factor authentication mechanism, say, no, this really is Burk I.T. And on the flip side, you need to be thinking about technologies where we can validate as a service provider, whoever your service provider is, can validate you as you call in for support to make sure that someone's not pretending to be the bank and calling in to get a password changed or to get a multi-factor token reassigned or to get access to a system reapplied. You need a mechanism to validate that identity. And there are tools to do that. We're rolling those types of tools out for our clients right now. But you have to think about the disadvantages of how AI can be used against you and how you prepare for that and manage identity in that situation. Synthetic identity generation. Anyone here ever heard of the term pig butchery? It's a major threat that's facing the world today. That is an attack vector that bad guys are using to talk people into cryptocurrency schemes and other mechanisms, and they're doing it with completely synthetic identities. They're creating humans that live only on the internet or only on the dark web or only through that social interaction medium, whether that's chat deals, whether that's WhatsApp or some other chat mechanism. And they're creating the entire persona and managing that persona using AI-driven tools. So not only are they creating a fake human, they're managing the life of that fake human and allowing it to adapt over time. So that when you go look to see is this person real, there are really snapshots on Facebook and Instagram posts, and they do appear in this database, and it does appear that they did travel to this country because AI gives them the processing power and the agility to do that. And just like we talked about lowering the bar, the entry level for being good in terms of cybersecurity, artificial intelligence has lowered the bar for the cyber criminal. You don't need to be a proficient hacker or a proficient computer technician to become a cyber criminal. You simply need to know which AI tools do I need to subscribe to. You need to have the wherewithal to find your way around the dark web for about an hour, and you can download or subscribe to any service you need to attack an individual. And that is sadly the world that we live in. So what are some other ways that cybercrime is leveraging AI? They're not only leveraging AI to do bad things, they're leveraging AI to attack AI. So the cybercriminals have developed ways in which they can inject or data poison artificial intelligence engines. So if you're using a service that uses AI to do ChatGPT-like output, generative AI output, they are poisoning that well to produce certain results so that it makes you more vulnerable to some type of cyber attack. That's the reality of the world we live in. They are analyzing data that has leaked from AI engines to determine what questions you asked and what information you input to the AI environment so they can glean more about your organization and take advantage of that data. We're seeing evasion of certain detection mechanisms through corrupting the AI data set. So if you have mechanisms to look for intrusions and other leveraging of your environment, they're taking advantage of corrupting that model to avoid your detection mechanisms. And the scariest part of all, because computing has become so cheap, because we can all purchase what we need either through legitimate or illegitimate means, they're now building their own AI engines and basically stealing the source code to create their own AI environments, to create content, to do code development, to write malware, to write attacks, to create their own vulnerabilities and applications using the same computing power that we're using to develop some of that content in a legitimate circle. So there's a true threat to how they are manipulating this environment and taking advantage of these tools. So that's the threat that we face. And we have to talk about how do we adapt, what do we do in terms of risk management, IT management, operational management to adapt to these level of threats. So the first thing that we've seen in terms of specific guidance to the financial industry for artificial intelligence is what the Department of the Treasury has released in terms of managing artificial intelligence specific cybersecurity risk. This document is available to everyone. It was released in March. It's a wonderful outline of how to adapt to and manage the risk that we all face with artificial intelligence. And there are really 5 key areas that this document focuses on that I'll just spend a little time on this morning. And so I'm just making sure I don't outrun my time. I don't want to get in trouble with Tina, nor does anyone else, I'm pretty sure. So we're going to stay on Tina's good side. So the very first thing, artificial intelligence has to become a part of every organization's risk management structure. You have to adapt your risk management procedures, your process, your forms, however you're doing risk management. If it's quantitative, qualitative, if you're doing an asset-based risk management, whatever you're doing, artificial intelligence needs to be a component on both sides of the risk scale. You have to be looking at AI in terms of how does it benefit your organization? How are you rolling it out as a control? How are you using the tools available to you through artificial intelligence to defend your environment? And what risks does artificial intelligence bring to your environment? How is it being used against you as an organization? How are you managing it in terms of how it can be leveraged from a social engineering perspective, or a code development perspective, or a malware risk perspective, and make sure that that is built into risk management for the organization? This should be top to bottom. This is not just an IT thing. This has to be looked at from enterprise risk. This has to be looked at from operational risk. This has to be looked at from a financial risk perspective, because AI has permeated every level of what we do as a society. So you have to look at it at each one of those levels and make sure it is baked in to your risk management process moving forward. Data mapping and data classification is absolutely fundamental now. All of us have had it. Everyone in this room that has a policy or procedure that deals with data classification, you've had that in your policy, set for 2 decades, at least 10 years, if not more. You have to make sure you're actually using it, because knowing where your data is, knowing who owns your data, knowing how your data is classified in terms of its overall sensitivity to the organization is of paramount importance when you are determining what is the risk we face in terms of artificial intelligence. Because you need to know, where is that data going? Are you feeding it into engines to make decisions for your organization? Are you using it to generate content for your sales and marketing process or your documentation process? Are you using it for fraud detection? And if so, how and where does it live? You have to understand your data set if you're going to defend it against the threats that AI presents to your organization. We can't just say it's confidential or it's not, we're fine. We need to understand, how sensitive is the data? On what system does the data live in my organization? If it's not on a system in my organization, where does it reside in the cloud? Who owns it? Who's managing it for me? Who's the provider? How is that provider leveraging artificial intelligence? So not only how are you leveraging it, but how is the provider that's hosting your service, your loan platform, your email, your document repository, your DocuSign mechanism, whatever that piece is, how are they leveraging the technology? And then, who is the owner of that data? So who do I go to have a conversation inside of my organization to make sure that I'm managing this data correctly? So this is an area where we have not spent as much time historically, but it is very important in a world in which our data can be manipulated so quickly and used against us. A couple of other important points. Vendor management and AI. You have to bake questions surrounding artificial intelligence into your vendor management process. You need to be asking questions about, how is AI used? How is it used in terms of content development? There is reality in the phrase that AI can hallucinate. This is not something we have made up. Artificial intelligence can lie very effectively, and you won't realize it if you don't proofread the output. You don't make sure it's legitimate. AI has been proven effective at citing, legal cases that don't exist, citing books that have never been written, citing web links that have never existed on the internet, because it can make mistakes. At the end of the day, a lot of generative AI was developed in what we call a gray box environment. They're not really sure how it got to the answer that it reached. They just think that the answer looks correct. So you have to validate the output. That means you have to understand, how are your vendors using this tool. Not only do you need to understand in terms of how the tool uses the technology proactively, you need to understand, how are they using AI to defend their environment. So the same controls that you are going to apply to your organization, you need to make sure your vendors are applying to their organization. Everyone here probably has a vendor management process that says that my vendor is using security controls equivalent to or better than the controls that I have in my environment. If you don't have that statement in your policy, come see me and I'll help you write it, because you need it. It's very, very, very important. But that has to apply to artificial intelligence as well. Integration of appropriate AI into your institution's cybersecurity framework. You've got to use the same tools to defend yourself that the bad guys are using to attack your environment. It is as simple as that. You cannot, show up at a gunfight with a knife. And we have to realize that's where we're at. We need to make sure that we are running next generation EDR and MDR controls. We need to make sure that we're doing deep analytics from a log management correlation perspective. We need to make sure that we are evaluating and penetration testing and vulnerability scanning our environments with tools that are agile enough to protect us and to alert us as to the threats that we're seeing. Because believe this, the bad guys are already using every one of these tools against you. The threat is not going away. So be prepared to implement these controls and implement them quickly in your organization. We can no longer simply check the box to say, I implemented something to meet this compliance standard. We have to implement tools that will actually defend us against the threats that are becoming stronger and faster and more agile than they ever have before. The fifth item here is an item that if you've ever heard me speak before at any of these events or in person, or you sat next to me at a bar once, you have to be using multi-factor authentication everywhere humanly possible. Credentials management, identity access, and authentication management is absolutely fundamental in the world in which we live. If you do not have an out-of-band factor to control your authentication mechanism, then you are susceptible to attack. In a world where AI can trick you into revealing almost anything, you've got to make sure there's something that defends you when that password is compromised, when that username has been gleaned off the dark web, when they've pretended to call the support desk and rotate your credentials and you didn't realize it. You darn well better have that token in your pocket or on your phone or that biometric control or something else that makes sure you are who you say you are. And as we talked about a second ago, this is not just about signing into your computer, signing into your mobile device, signing into your mobile banking platform or loan platform or some other mechanism. This is how do you validate your support desk mechanisms? How do you validate when your branch managers call in and ask for support, or a new employee that is at your 28th location that you may have never met is calling in and asking for help? How do you know that person is legitimate? How do you know that that's not a social engineering attack? If you watch the news in the last 6 months, you saw the attack that happened in Las Vegas against MGM and Caesars. That was a horrible situation. Depending on who you want to follow, they lost tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars in a 4-day period. That all originated from one phone call to a support desk to get a multi-factor token rotated for a user. One support call led to the compromise of multi-billion-dollar organizations for more than a week. So you have to be prepared to be agile. Now, we have other tools that have been released. The Department of Treasury has released a revised NIST document that worked with NIST to revise the AI risk management framework from the National Institution of Standards and Technologies. If you haven't read it, it's an exciting read. Don't read it before bedtime. You won't make it to the other end. There's tremendous value. Break it down. Use it in your organization. Use your compliance mechanisms to break it down. Apply it to your organization because it uses that foundational set of controls of how do we govern AI in our organization, how do we map it out, how do we know where it's at, how do we measure it, how do we measure the risk that we're facing due to artificial intelligence, and then ultimately how do we manage that. And that should be a core framework for everyone's risk management process, but you have to apply it to artificial intelligence. We're going to constantly see this topic evolve over the next several months to several years. The government's getting involved, legislators are getting involved, we're going to see new laws, we're going to see new regulations. FDIC, TDFI, Virginia State, everybody is going to be asking you questions in terms of how are you approaching artificial intelligence in your organization. You've got to be prepared to answer them and be able to react to these types of problems. So with that, most important thing I can do is say thank you and ask you if you have any questions. I wanted to set aside enough time to be able to answer anything that you have or help you navigate any questions that have come up as you've looked at artificial intelligence. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. That is an absolute truth. This is the most important thing that you can share. This isn't theoretical anymore. It's getting used every day. Absolutely every day is it getting used. And it's not. It doesn't have to be simple. It doesn't have to be complicated things like voice manipulation or video manipulation. It's going to be text messages. It's going to be an email to you that looks exactly valid, exactly how that person writes, exactly the words that they would use, the phrases they use, the jokes they use, the little nudges that they use. We're emulating humans more effectively than we ever have in the past. What other questions do you? Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. The most important thing you can do is stick to your policies and procedures and have those secondary controls. Have that second check and that third check. I don't care if it's the CEO of the bank or the CFO of the bank. Say, okay, I still need you to sign into the system and send me that request legitimately. It still needs to flow through our process. We still need to validate that we've gotten this message and this password and use this token, whatever that mechanism is, to make sure that you validate. You can't simply trust the human interaction. You have to fall back to the primary check, the secondary check, the tertiary check to make sure that wire is legitimate and that request is valid or whatever that change may be. You can't just simply say, I'll take your word for it. It is that sound, forever proven, trust and verify approach. Yeah, that's a very good point. There are things you can do in terms of having recorded, passphrases or codes that they need to be able to provide you. It may be that you put in place their tools where you can send them text-based validation. I'm not a fan of email validation because business email compromise is probably the biggest threat that all of us face. So it's become way too easy for someone to impersonate someone in terms of their email. But having in your system a code word or some other mechanism to validate that identity outside of just a phone call. Or maybe it's part of the phone call. Okay, I need you to give me your authorization phrase for X that's captured in your core system. There are also tools out there. We're deploying a tool that we use that we can actually deploy a soft agent, a smartphone app to our clients to say, okay, I need you to validate that you are who you say you are. So we send in a code. If anybody has ever used Duo or any other push notification mechanism, we have a mechanism to say, okay, I'm going to send you a code. I need you to validate you are the branch manager you say you are. We see that pop up on the screen. Okay, I'll go ahead and reset your password. I'll go ahead and do what you need to do. And vice versa. If they question us, we have the ability to say, okay, go grab your branch manager. I'm going to give them a token. It should match what they have on their app. You now know you're talking to Burk I.T. So there are tools available. I'll be happy to have those conversations with anybody that'd like to. I'm not here to sell solutions, but we can talk through those technical controls at our booth anytime you like. What else? No, that's a great question. I am encouraging every organization we work with to make sure you're taking artificial intelligence into account when you build an acceptable use policy for your organization. So just as you've had an acceptable use policy forever that says this is what you can and cannot do with your personal device, this is what you can and cannot do with the business laptop you were assigned, you should have an acceptable use section that addresses artificial intelligence. These are the tools that we have approved and validated for our organization. This is the process you need to go through to get authorization to use those tools. This is what you need to do to make sure IT comes and validates everything is correct and set up appropriately. This is your validation process to look at the output of that tool and make sure it's appropriate for the bank. This is the type of data that you are allowed to input to the tool, and this is the type of data that you're not allowed to input to the tool so that we're not exposing customer data to an AI engine that doesn't belong to the bank. That's very important. That's part of that data leakage process we talked about and part of the privacy and data classification process you need to go through. But defining acceptable use when it comes to artificial intelligence is very important in the world that we live in today. I've done this for a lot of clients. I'm happy to help anyone who would like to have that conversation. What else do you have? All right. Well, really quickly, you can see my information is on the screen. You can email me at any time. I'm happy to answer Any questions that pop up at lunch or later on, I'll be around today and tomorrow, so don't hesitate to stop me. Yes, that is my personal security blog, virtualsweatervest.com. I am a fan of the sweater vest. There is on my blog, I have a post related to artificial intelligence. It's basically an outline of this talk. So you're welcome to go there, download it, all the definitions are listed, all that information. There are also some printouts of that particular talk that are available at our booth. So stop by and ask Tyler or Stephanie, and they'll provide you anything that you like. But thank you very much for this opportunity with this one.